Not to be racist, but how are people black when the first two people that were made are white? That's a great question. So just so you know, I don't touch the topic of religion. But scientifically speaking, I can tell you that the first people actually came from Africa. About 300,000 years ago, we see the first Homo sapiens. And they, of course, appeared in Africa. They evolved from, and I could never say this one right, they evolved from Homo heidelbergensis. I can never say that one right. I understand how it's confusing, because whenever you see an evolution of human beings, you always see the person as white. But the first people, they lived in Africa. People did not develop white skin and blonde hair until they migrated to Europe. See, Africa was pretty difficult to live in. So you needed pretty dark skin, because this pigment that you see, melanin, that's your natural sunblock. The first people that lived in Africa needed the natural sunblock. They were black. Now again, you then migrate a little bit north. People then migrated to Europe, and then of course the pigmentation went away, blonde hair developed, blue eyes developed, but the first individuals were black. I hope this helps.
If you believe in the Bible, answer these questions. Now, only one answers. I don't need no you lost or you dumb or none of that shit. Just answer my questions, please. And all these answers should match because y'all all believe the same book. So in the Bible, it says Adam and Eve was the first people on this earth, right? But then how did all other races evolve? If two Caucasian people or whatever race they was, how could they possibly make other races? And better yet, wouldn't we all be related? Another question, Noah's Ark.
My guy, honestly, it kind of make me sad how nobody in the comments can answer this man's questions. But I can. Alright, so first what you messed up at is when you brought up Adam and Eve and saying how two Caucasians can make other races. Let's start off by saying Adam and Eve was not white, they was not Caucasian. But two black people can make other races, which is called the Eve gene. You can just go read up on that yourself. Not to mention the oldest bone found in the world is from a black woman. Now let's get to the book of Enoch, which was taken out of the Bible. The book of Enoch was taken out of the Bible because it was rejected by the Jews, because it contained prophecies pertaining to Christ. Now let's get into how other races was really made while using the Bible. Scientists honestly proved that the Bible was real without even knowing it, honestly, when they found out about the Neanderthal DNA. I do not know if y'all know about the fallen angels. Everybody in this world was black to start off with. The fallen angels were sent down here to watch over the people, but instead they started having sexual intercourse with the people. With the fallen angels having sexual intercourse with the people and disobeying God, they had kids and created giants, which then giants started to have kids, which created Nephilims. And when the Nephilims began to have kids, they created Neanderthals, which scientists proved that Neanderthals did exist, which then the Neanderthals began to have kids. And not only that, where those people was living, there was a lot of sun. The Neanderthals couldn't take the heat, so they hibernated to the Caucasus Mountains, which then the Neanderthals began to have kids, which began to create this. Caucasians were made, not born. It's a mutation. Also, and since you talked about the bloodline, God speaks about how after the third or fourth generation, you lose a certain bloodline. Kind of like if a black person have a kid with a white person. That kid is 50% black, 50% white. Then say that kid goes back to a black person. Now that kid is going to be 75% black, 25% white. Then after that kid goes back to a black person, that kid is still going to have an itsy bitsy piece of white DNA. But after that kid goes back to a black person, the white has disappeared and is soon to go back to its natural race. So sooner or later, that whole bloodline will be wiped out. So think about where that bloodline will be at after thousands of years has passed. You had a lot of questions, so now I gotta make a part 2.
Be related? Another question, Noah's Ark. So y'all truly believe that Noah grabbed 2 of each animal and put them on a boat and none of them ate each other? But y'all call me a deceiver and an antichrist for not believing in something that obviously doesn't make sense. So I just want to know, how do we repopulate after Noah's Ark if God flooded the whole entire planet and only Noah and his family survived? Y'all saying that Noah's our ancestors? So you telling me this guy right here, including me, and this guy has the same ancestor, and we're all related? I really want to see what answer y'all can give me for that. Just think about how you sound while you're typing it. Another question, if heaven and hell is real, you have to die to go to heaven and hell.
My guy, so you truly believe that if God can speak to Noah and his people to create the ark, that he couldn't spiritually speak to the animals to let them know not to eat each other? He created human and animals. I'm pretty sure he could speak to both. Also, have you not heard of the Eve gene? The Eve gene is a mitochondrial DNA that could create any color of race. So let's talk about the book of Enoch that was taken out of the Bible. I don't know if y'all know the scripture of the book of Enoch where it talks about Noah's father and mother going up to Enoch telling him that Noah looks like the kids from the fallen angels, as if he's a descendant of the fallen angels. You can go watch my part 1 to tell you how people were created in different shades and forms. Noah was of a pale skin, albino. That's why his father and mother was scared of him and said that he looked like the children's descendants of the fallen angels. He was a pale skin and colored eyes. Also, God talks about the 4th and 5th bloodline where your bloodline will wear out after a certain amount of generations. So yes, Noah did have to repopulate the world. Him and his family. Noah was albino and his wife was black, which she contained the Eve gene. After a certain amount of generations, your bloodline will wear out. For instance, if a black person has a kid with a white person, that kid's going to be 50% black, 50% white. Then if that kid goes to a black person soon, their kid is going to be 75% black, 25% white. And if their kid goes to a black person, that kid is going to only have like 1% of white inside of them. Then after that, sooner or later, that bloodline of white will be wiped out. That kid will only be of one race. That bloodline has been thinned out. Also, you can go watch my part 1 to show you how Caucasians was made, which basically it answers this question also. But there were curses put upon his people. So after thousands of years, your cousin far, 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 far on this side is black, and your cousin far, 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 far on this side can be white. But you will never know. That's the power of life. And that's the power of Yah. So you can't also just read the Bible. You have to go read the parts of the Bible that was taken out also. It could actually answer all the questions that you're asking. But you asked a lot of questions, so now I have to make a part 3.
Look, boys and girls, the only reason there are white people is because black people came here first. And they faded as they moved farther and farther north from the equator. Their melanin faded so that their skin, their hair, and their eyes got lighter. Their brains didn't get smaller, but their skin, their hair, and their eyes got lighter. That's the only reason you children can call yourselves white. And you aren't white. We are all shades of brown.
So this is the tea. How could there be, black people if the first people on earth were white? It really contradicts that one. And even as we've just heard, from the prelude, that there's no possibility that the first people on earth would be white and therefore have all these particular variations, and then black comes from there, all these other other colored individuals coming from white. So it is something that has posed a big controversy on social media platforms, something that I had to bring on board. So there are sentiments that I've prepared, because me and you gonna watch, and then of course as we usually do it here, we make our thoughts towards the end of it. But of course you should be also asking yourself a question, that how is that are possible, all these particular variations from white all the way to black should be from black and then to white. So we've got these particular individuals who've got these particular opinions, and I feel like it's worthy listening, and then we make our judgments towards the end of it. So let's watch.
So, my ancestors were asked by white men to come to this country, which they had stolen and forced black people to build, because they were hoping that my ancestors would be the new cheap and disposable labor to undercut the recently freed black people that lazy white men didn't want to pay. And when my ancestors wouldn't do that, they were lynched and massacred, their towns were destroyed, they were blown up while building the railroads, and ultimately they were excluded from society in the country for nearly 60 years. Then when the United States asked us to come back in the 1960s because they wanted to put us in the way of black people again, and the United States needed to rehabilitate its reputation with Asian countries that were gaining in economic and political power, we had civil rights because of black people.
Let's talk history for a second. Today I want to address the notion that black South Africans are Bantu colonizers and that white settlers were actually here first. Yeah, you heard that right. Apparently we are the real colonizers. But that couldn't be further from the truth, and the evidence is clear. Let's talk about it. Historical evidence shows that by the year 500 CE, Bantu peoples had already settled and well established themselves in parts now known as KwaZulu-Natal, Limpopo, and the eastern regions. This is proven through archaeological, linguistic, and radiocarbon dating evidence. Key examples are those like Happy Rest and Leidenburg in the Mpumalanga region. This area was occupied around 400 to 600 CE, and this is where they found the famous Leidenburg heads, which were a part of early Bantu ritual culture. Pottery and settlement patterns also show that there was a link to Nguni and Sotho-Tswana ancestors that lived in the area. Another one we have is the Silver Leaf site near Tzaneen in Limpopo, which dated around 370 to 460 CE through radiocarbon dating. In this region, they found Iron Age pottery, grain remains, and metal tools, which all showed evidence of long-term habitation by agriculturalists and not nomads. Next, we have the Ntekane site of KwaZulu-Natal, which dates back to around 500 CE. It showed evidence of iron production and village settlements. This was among the earliest Bantu-speaking settlements in South Africa. And of course, the ever so popular one, the late Iron Age Kingdom of Mapungubwe from 1075 to 1220. This area was located near the Limpopo River and was largely inhabited by the Venda peoples. This was actually South Africa's first known state. So by the time the Dutch arrived here in 1652, African societies and communities had already been building and trading with one another for over 1,000 years. Calling that colonization is disingenuous and it is dishonest. We were Africans moving within Africa, not foreigners invading like you were. True colonization began when Europeans arrived with ships, guns, and the idea that they can own other people's land. So, no, white settlers were not here first. And it's funny to me that for a people who claim that they came here before we did, they sure don't have any archaeological or historical evidence to support their claims. Funny. And also to address this idea that the Bantu peoples colonized the Khoisan and unalived them off is a distorted version of history. Firstly, the Khoisan and the Bantu peoples actually traded with one another and for the most part actually coexisted with one another peacefully. We intermarried, we traded, we even lived alongside one another for hundreds of years before European settlement. If anything, let me give you guys the real truth. During the 18th and 19th centuries, white European settlers actually made it legal to hunt Khoisan peoples. It was legal for European settlers to raid and disrupt Khoisan communities and to unalive them off. The story is simple. This is African land with African history that goes back tens of thousands of years. Don't let racists rewrite the timeline.
Coloreds are not a mixture between black and white. First of all, we are the descendants of the first people of the world according to science. Not only of South Africa. Every nation on the planet derives from us. The Chinese, the DNA is traced back to us. The Indians, the white men, the black men, scientifically proves that all of them come from us. So, being us is being most original. There's no one that's more original than us.
Go and ask the anthropologists, who is first? White people or black people? Come on. If white people were first on this earth, you never could have got here because no white man can produce a black offspring. Huh? When they want to find the origin of man, they don't go to Europe, they go to Africa. The white man is not a native anywhere on the earth, but everywhere on the earth they have gone, they have found a sign that you were already there. That's right. That's right. You are the original people, therefore you are the first. That's right. You are the elder. You are the stronger.
All right, racists, let's talk about the truth. There is so much discourse lately about who is native and who is indigenous, and even the nerve to bring up who is the architect of soul food. And what everyone needs to understand is that black people are the earth. Black people are the only unmutated humanity. They told you humans came from Africa like it was a migration story. But that's not the truth. The truth is, Africa is the first face of the earth. And blackness is the source of all biology. Everyone else? Genetic drift, mutational echo, survival glitches adapted to ice and exile. Let's talk origins. The black woman is the womb of the world. Forget the Eve in the garden story. That was a stolen metaphor. The real Eve lives in the woman's mitochondria. And not just any women. Melanin-rich, thick-hipped, thick-lipped, and copper-toned. Elegant, poised, literally perfect, planet-rooted black women. White women don't carry the full ancestral genome. Asian, Mexican, and Native women only carry fragments. Black women carry the total code. She doesn't reproduce diversity. She births the whole species. When small African offshoot groups migrated north, they weren't evolving. They were mutating, adapting to survival, not thriving. That's where lighter skin, narrow nostrils, reduced melanin, and behavioral changes began. All signs of environmental stress, not superiority. You don't get white by evolving. You get white by forgetting the sun. And that forgetting is not advancement, it's progression. The white genome contains 1 to 4% Neanderthal DNA. Let me repeat, they didn't just descend from humans. They were cavemen. Black people have 0 Neanderthal admixture. That's not a joke. That's biology. Black people are the originals. Non-black people are the remix. The problem is, the remix decided to express its evil nature by attempting to erase the original track. Let's talk indigenous. The term indigenous was invented by settlers to decide who was native enough to be managed, named, and displaced. But indigenous is a political term, not a genetic one. And political terms can't overwrite blood memory. Being first on the continent does not make you first on the planet. However, black people being first on the planet means they are first on every continent. The black genome is Earth's source code. Everyone else is just running a copy of their biological operating system. The war against black genetics is a war against humanity. Melanin isn't pigment, it's the processor. It's the molecule that translates solar energy into life. Plants have it, animals have it, humans need it. Black people have the highest concentration of it, which means black people don't just live on Earth, they translate it. They are not just a race, they are the root species. Black isn't a color, it's the motherboard. Every other group, adaptations, mutations, and mistakes. This isn't supremacy. This is truth. Black people didn't come from Africa. Africa came from black people.
So, the internet on fire again. And of course, this time it's not about politics or it's not about celebrity drama. It's about the truth. And that truth is that the kind that hits a little too close to home. And see, the story of, that's got some white folks heated. It's simple. Science keeps proving that black people are not only the foundation of civilization, but also the literal blueprint of every other race on Earth. Now, and of course, every credible anthropologist, agrees that the first humans walked on Earth, they were from Africa. And our DNA mapping confirms that all modern human beings trace their lineage back to African ancestors. That's not a theory, that's biology. Now, but there is a thing, somewhere along this particular history, the fact got buried under layers of lies, rewritten books, and colonial narratives. Suddenly, black civilization that built cities, empires, and systems of knowledge were, painted as quote-unquote primitive. And meanwhile, the world was fed a version of history that placed Europe as the center of, progress, while Africa was shown as a continent waiting to be, discovered. But now, the internet and dinosaur scholars and even genetic science are pulling back the curtain. The truth feels that threatening to those who've lived in the comfort of those same lies. It's not just about color, it's about control of the story. Because if black people are the origin, the beginning that is, then it flips the whole world and order upside down. Suddenly all those so-called discoveries weren't discoveries at all. They were, rediscoveries of what Africa had already, built. But then you can see the tension. Some white people get defensive, others try to dismiss it as an, race baiting kind of, but deep down it's not anger, it's fear that truth invalidates, everything that they've been taught, and who holds the power, who invented what, and who shaped humanity. So, but there is the gist, and this is the twist. This isn't about hate. It's about saying one race is better than the other. It's about reclaiming the truth that was told and given credit where it's due. Because when you erase someone's history, you erase their humanity. So yes, or yeah, the truth is that out there, loud and unstoppable, black people are not, an afterthought. In history, they are history's foundation. So every race, every culture that came after, it all traces back to the same origin: black life. And no matter how uncomfortable that makes some folks, feel, truth doesn't change because of opinion. It just waits patiently until everybody's ready to face it. So I'm gonna pause here. I go by Sherlock. If it's your first time that you're bumping across this particular channel, how about you join the big, family here? You subscribe. You'll be the first one to be notified. Leave that particular comment on the comment section. Like you're participating in this particular bigger context, and then if the whole topic really agitates you or takes you to or reminds you of something. And see you in the next one. Try.